All right, so right now I want to read an article which I have not read yet, but has been on my radar for some time now. This was published in January, so I guess not that long, but I've known about it ever since. People have been talking about it. It's all over Twitter. This term that Sasha, I guess, came up with, Deep Okayness, has really seemed to catch on, and I've seen all sorts of people use it. I mean, the reason why I'm not already on the article is that I just thought it was interesting what the results were when I searched for this article on Google, right? So we have obviously his article there, and then a couple of things from Twitter, and then we have an article from Ali Abdaal about Sasha's advice, citing Deep Okayness, right? And then we have this one from Yu Daimon, which is stealing my Twitter name. No, but so there's right, and so then there's another thing by Sasha there. Anyway, there's a couple other articles that are already talking about Sasha's idea, Sasha's concept here. So that's just kind of an interesting thing, that it's become a term. I'm trying to think who else I've seen use it. I've definitely heard Michael Ashcroft talk about it. Yeah, thinking about when and how I've seen Michael talk about this term, it reminds me that it seems like Sasha and, shoot, I'm forgetting his name, Nick Camarada or whatever, they seem to have positioned themselves or like established themselves, whatever. Position sounds extremely strategic, and I don't necessarily mean it that way, but they have come to be seen as these like two shining examples, for lack of a better term right now, of not mental health per se, but happiness. I don't actually follow Nick very closely, so I don't know super well what he talks about, but I know I think he does a lot of like MDMA. He talks about internal family systems, talks about parts work. And somehow or other, people see him as just like being ridiculously happy all the time. And his state of happiness, or what people imagine his life to be like, seems to have become something that many other people are striving for. It's kind of funny to consider it this way, but in that sense, he is doing lifestyle marketing. Like, he is an influencer in that sense, whereas there might, on the other hand, the more normal idea of an influencer is like on YouTube or on Instagram, and they're taking sexy pictures of themselves and pictures in private jets and hotels and traveling around the world, right? And people aspire to that. And in this weird little Twitter world in which we find ourselves, the aspirational thing is I don't even know how Nick portrays this exactly. I'm guessing it's just all through Twitter and all through text and the various things that he writes there. Maybe not. Maybe he has videos and podcasts and interviews and stuff. If he does, I've never seen them. But yeah, he's put himself in this position, or he's been put in this position by other people's imaginations that that he has this state of happiness which everyone wants. And similarly, it seems as if Sasha has kind of done the same thing, or has happened to have done that, however strategically or not. So, yeah, this is an article that many people talk about. I have not read, and I've been meaning to read it, but at the same time, I've been hesitant to read it because I just want to think about these things for myself, because I do this work on a daily basis as well. I'm a huge IFS nerd, parts work, shadow work, what have you. And I find it is more helpful in general for me to stay away from other people's thoughts and feelings about that stuff. Because at the end of the day, I'm trying to learn about my own inner world, my own thoughts and feelings, in a really subtle, nuanced, intricate, intimate way. And I'm not saying there's no value in interacting with other people or reading other people's work. I'm doing that right now, but at certain times it's nice to create something of a bubble so that you can actually just reflect on what you currently have, put off having new experiences, put off taking in new information and taking in new perspectives, because you're going to have a reaction to those things. It's going to incorporate itself into your mind in some way, right? And while I'm still trying to investigate my own inner world, I wanna put up a boundary and say, look, I'll get to that stuff later, But for now, I'm just gonna look at what I've already got, the things I've already read, the things I remember, the memories I have, the experiences I've been through. I want to reflect on that, examine my own experience first, and then once I feel like I've done as much as I want, or I feel like I have some more space for other people, then I'll open up and take a look at what other people are saying. So that's what I'm doing right now. Yeah, that was way more than I expected to say. So let's get in the actual article. So I'm not clicking yet because I'm just curious about this blurb here. Deep Okayness is not the feeling that I am awesome all the time. Instead, it is the total banishment of self-loathing. Okay. Cool. So, little teaser, little definition. I mean, actually, just from marketing point of view, not even marketing, but Deep Okayness, I just assumed was the title of the article. It's not. But it is right here in the subhead. So, all right, let's go. I didn't even realize that this was a Substack article. I kind of just assumed it was Do Substacks essentially... Shit, this is long. There's no way I'm going to read this whole thing on this video, so I'll have to do multiple parts, I guess. I guess Substacks are just kind of like blogs nowadays. I don't have one myself, and I don't really read any for all the reasons I was just saying, but I just assumed that it was on his website. So, alright. The title, How I Attained Persistent Self-Love, or I Demand Deep Okayness for Everybody, for everyone. Interesting. 2-part title. And then the subtitle is I know this is not a sales page or anything.
So it's just funny that if it was a sales page, or if I were writing this as a sales page in work contexts in which I've been in, people would be like, that subhead fucking sucks. It's so... I'm not criticizing it. I think it works. Clearly it works because this article is very popular. But it's funny to me from a copywriting, direct response, marketing point of view. One, it's interesting to see that there's no capital there, right? And there's that whole thing on Twitter, which I used to do, and I know some people still do, and they really like it, of not using capital letters, because it helps them be less perfectionist and feel like they're being more real. Sure. That's how it worked for me too. So it's interesting that this subhead is like that. I don't know if it's a mistake or not, but it immediately makes me think of that. So kind of like makes it feel a little less official. It makes it feel a little more personable, right? And it is possible to feel better than you think. It's so... wishy-washy is not the right way to describe it, but it's not that specific. And it's not a promise. It's just saying it's possible to feel better than you think, right? So yeah, it's not specific. It's not like better than you think is so open to interpretation. It's not like saying you will feel happy every single day, right? Which is a very specific claim. It's just, it's possible to feel better than you think. But I think the vagueness of it works here, because he is promising, but it is so soft that it doesn't feel like it's hitting you over the head. You know, it's almost cheeky in that sense. How I attained persistent self-love. Attain is an interesting word. At least for me, that's I don't think I ever actually say that word. And I don't know, I've never heard Sasha talk, I don't think. So, you know, maybe he does say attain. I'm just going to assume that he doesn't. He's similar to me in that respect. And so, yeah, ask basically, why use this word, attain? It's very evocative, right? Like, what other things do we attain? I guess this doesn't sound exactly right now that I'm thinking of it, but like enlightenment, right? Don't you attain enlightenment? Like, attain is very lofty. It has the sense of like reaching the summit of a mountain. Attain. I don't even know why. I just have that association. Like, honestly, I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of any common uses of attain. Like, do you attain? Yeah, nothing comes to mind, but it does give me that impression. Like, it's lofty, it's big, it's yeah, summiting, getting somewhere high up, a peak. So I attained it. So I like finally reached this peak that I've been climbing towards, right? It's not the end of a journey. You don't attain your destination, that's for sure, right? So it's not just like, I reached it. You reach the end of the road. You don't attain the end of the road. So, you know, I'll stop talking about that, or else it'll take forever to get through this. So this other second part is interesting. I demand deep okayness for everyone. That is really fascinating to me, actually. Why he would have this in the headline. It makes it I demand. It's like, okay, demand. Like, what does that mean? Like, who is he demanding it of? Right? And it doesn't really say. It's like, when you demand, you demand something of somebody. Right? Or like, I demand deep okayness for everyone. It's like, I demand that I demand universal basic income for all the citizens, right? So you're demanding the thing of some person or some institution or whatever. So that's one way to read this. It's like almost feels like he's demanding deep okayness for all of us readers. But from whom? From somebody, like from the man, from the system, from the universe. Who knows? Doesn't say. But it kind of gives it a cool abstract sense to this of like, it's kind of like saying, I wish this of, I wish reality would allow for this. I don't know. Yeah, it's funny. Reading it in that way, it's almost like a way of relating to reality. It's like, I demand reality allow everyone to feel okay, right? Anyway, that's kind of reading into it. Or maybe really, really, really reading into it. I do that sometimes. So the other way to read it is, I demand deep okayness for everyone. So is he demanding it of us, for the reader? I mean, the reason I'm saying this as the second way to read it is because it's not how it feels when I read it. It's like, I don't feel as if he's telling me to do something, right? I don't feel like he's demanding me to feel okay. There's no sense yet of like, you should feel okay. Like, you should cultivate this. I demand that you cultivate deep okayness. That's not how it feels at all. And you know, if I didn't know anything about Sasha, maybe it would feel like that. But as I said in my other video about building a second brain, like, my experience with Sasha, or my experience with the writer, or whoever, with the idea that I'm being introduced to, how much I know about it kind of totally shapes my experience on the page as a reader. So I know about Sasha. I've read his tweets. I follow him on Twitter for a while, or I don't actually follow him, but you know what I mean. He seems like a fun, friendly kind of guy, right? Not like a really intense self-help, like shitting all over you kind of person. So I'm not inclined to interpret him in that way. So yeah, I'll finish there. Let me see how long I've been recording already, because I don't want to go too long. 20 minutes, okay. So let's see. I'm gonna start reading. So I'm not gonna read it out loud though. I don't think that would. I'm like caught up in whether I'm trying to read this like as a writer and analyze it because I know he's a really good writer, or if I'm just trying to get to the ideas. Because like this first sentence, right? It's very, I love it because, well, I love it. Maybe that's generous, but what's cool is that it forces you, in a certain sense, obviously not literally, it forces you, it requires for it to make sense that you keep reading. In my life, there have been roughly 2 important psychological changes. If you care about Sasha at all, that piques your curiosity, and so it's like, okay, well, what were they, right? I can't just read that sentence and then be done. Like, there's a term for that, or there's probably many terms in copywriting, but the slippery slide. It's like, meaning the reader gets on the slide and it's slippery and they just slide all the way down to the end. And that's what this sentence is doing. I have to keep going. What the heck? What are the 2 changes? All right. Yeah, I'm conflicted because I do want to read it in that way, and I do want to study Sasha's writing, but I also don't want to spend a billion years doing this. Whoa, okay. So the first sentence gets me hooked. Second sentence is fucking throws a punch. Damn. The first was from... Okay. So it's like, in one sentence, he just introduced a journey that he's been on, right? So there's a story there. This is obviously super intense. And then this is really nice, actually. Reasonably functional person. He's not trying to make himself sound like, I'm amazing, like now I'm a millionaire and like I get all the girls. I know that he's married. I was gonna say I get all the girls, but like cliche stuff, right? Influencer type stuff. Like, but this is nice. It's reasonable. It's like, I'm not trying to pretend that like everything's fucking amazing. It's like, I'm reasonably functional now. It was really bad, and now it's pretty okay. And that builds trust, you know? It doesn't feel bombastic. It doesn't feel like he's trying to sell me on this, right? So that's really important, actually. I've wondered for a long time why this article struck such a nerve and why it has become so popular and shared and referred to. And I mean, I'm also just generally curious about Sasha, and this already, it's like the headline and the first 2 sentences are telling me a lot about him, about his style. All right. But yeah, so both of these first sentences just create a ton of curiosity. The first sentence requires me to keep going to find out what the heck he was talking about. The second sentence is like vulnerable also, you know? It tells you that he went through some shit, right? So you feel like, oh dang, like this guy's being vulnerable with me. And it tells you in one sentence that there's a story, like a very interesting sounding story, right? How did he go from that to that? And he also doesn't try to like be a obnoxious, perfect person. Doesn't try to make himself out to be something that he's not necessarily. So a lot has happened already within 2 sentences. Okay, so then the second, which happened over the last year, was finding something that you might call So boom, here's his big idea, right? And again, this sentence as well implies a story. How did he find this? What was that journey? And partially we want to know that because we know Sasha. Parasocially, we know him. We know him through his work and his presence online. And then two, because he has put a promise out there, right? That's important to remember. He has made a promise. He has put this out there. Persistent self-love. Something which we all want. So we're reading it because we also hope it's not just, oh, here's a fun story about Sasha, but it's also like, oh, well, he seems to have achieved something that I want to achieve. How did he do it? Right? So in the way, this article is like both a story, or it's like a how-to wrapped in a story. Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna not read past the fold because I'm going so much more slowly than I expected to, or so. Yeah, I'm just gonna read to this third paragraph. All right. So, second paragraph. Okay, so basically, he introduced this idea in the last sentence of the first paragraph, Deep Okayness. He achieved this thing. And then he immediately defines it. What is it? And again, he's like not trying to make these super grand promises or like grand claims about himself, right? It's not that I'm awesome all the time, which is what other people would probably claim. Instead, it is the total banishment of self-loathing. So it's not necessarily extreme highs, but it's the getting rid of extreme lows. It's getting rid of the painful stuff, the tendency to shoot ourselves in the foot, to self-flagellate. That's a cool idea. Yeah, sort of like zooming out from yourself so much that you just see yourself as like one among billions, right? And it's this interesting way in which, you know, there's so much good that can come from taking greater responsibility for yourself, right? It's sort of like in a stoic way, assuming responsibility for your life in a way that you have not in the past, sensing that you have more agency, right? But then the flip side of that is it can be extremely like relieving to see yourself as just like a speck, like just like a little ant, right? Like as part of a big system, a big game, a big whatever, cosmos. right? And it's like, what control do I really have? Like, I'm just a small thing. Why hate it, right? Or like, yeah, this idea that I am merely one of the apertures through which the universe expresses itself. Apertures is an interesting word. Maybe there's a meaning of aperture that I don't know, but all I know it as like the opening of a camera. So the analogy here, or the metaphor, is a little confusing, but yeah, like rather than thinking of myself as self-created, which you might do with a more like stoic perspective, you go the opposite way and you're like, look, there's fucking billions of years of evolution and universe behind me, right? And I'm just the product of that. Like, why judge that? Why hate it? Like, I am what I am. Who am I to like try to be otherwise? Like, me and my life and who I am and what I do and how I feel about myself, it's just like the tip of the iceberg. It's like the weeds growing on the side of the road. Like, it just happens. It's nobody's fault. Yeah. My basic worth is beyond question. I have no essential damage. I am not polluted. I am fine. Yeah. I like that. And that's like an interesting way in which I don't know if this is really accurate to say it this way, but I was going to say being objective about yourself, but I don't think that that's correct. I have an interesting relationship to the idea of being objective. But, so what I'll say instead is just taking a different perspective than the one that you have from your own self, right? Through your own eyes. It's like zooming out to the moon and being like, oh yeah, there's the Earth. It's really tiny. It looks nice. Zooming out of all of the complexity and relationships and all that stuff and be like, wow, hey look, it's just a little blue dot. And somewhere on that blue dot is a little animal, and it's me. Right? How cute. From that perspective, you're so far away, like you can't get caught up in like all your problems, they shrink to the point of being non-existent. It's like from the moon, you don't know all the anxieties and the self-hate and the criticisms and all that crap that's in any person's mind, right? You just look like a little ant. I mean, you can't even see people from the moon, obviously, but it's just like a little ant, It's like if you look down at the ground or whatever, your kitchen sink, if it's dirty, and you see an ant, you're like, hey, ant. You don't have this impulse to be like, oh, I bet that ant is full of self-hate and so much angst and shit like that. It's just like, it's an ant living its life, And so sort of taking that perspective on oneself can be really, really nice, really relieving to shrug off that like overwhelming sense of like, I am in control and I have to take responsibility for everything, and like I have to be, I don't, I don't want to be passive, like all this stuff. It can put a lot of pressure on you. Yeah. You see an ant, it's like, it's just doing its thing, eating some crumbs. There's nothing wrong with the ant. It's an ant. It's just doing what it does. There's nothing wrong with it. There's not damaged. It's not polluted. It's fine. Right? That's how we would see an ant. I mean, maybe some people are like, fuck ant, you piece of shit, and kill it. I mean, I guess I also do that. But even so, I don't attribute, I just outed myself as an ant murderer. Oops. No, but we don't attribute all of this shit to a teeny little ant, right? It's just a little ant. It's fine. So being able to take that perspective on oneself is like massively relieving. Okay. So this last paragraph before I wrap this up. I have never felt better. Is that a link? Oh, it is a link. By the way, I don't think I've read anything by Sasha ever. So, this is fun. I've never felt better, and it's only now. Right, that's interesting. That is like a further hook. It's intriguing, curiosity inducing. It's like, okay, even when I was functional, I was wasting a lot of time despising myself. And what's interesting too is he's using that functional up here as well. It's like, okay, maybe we think of ourselves as functional, right? It's like our life is not so bad. Like we get shit done, we do our jobs, we're functional. Why worry, right? Like what reason do I have to introspect, to reflect on myself, to look inward and do any of this stuff? I'm doing my shit. I'm functional. What's the problem, right? But this sentence is like, oh yeah, even when I was functional, I was wasting a ton of time despising myself, right? So it draws you in further. It's like, okay, well, I think of myself as functional, but maybe, well, since I identify with him at that level, maybe I also am wasting time. I don't know, you know? So it draws you in because you've related, or I've related. Well, I won't talk about other people. I've related. It's like, okay, I relate to him, functional person, more or less. But apparently, I can be functional and also waste time. Huh, maybe I'll entertain the idea that I'm doing the same. And then it was a lot of time. Yeah, just kind of restates or like punctuates it and emphasizes it. And then there's a link to some other article that I won't click on that for now. So I'm gonna wrap up. I think I've been going for like half an hour, probably more at this point. But I think I'll make a series of videos reading this because it is interesting, and I've only just scratched the surface of the article. So, um, yeah, I'll I'll catch you in the next one. How about that? Later.